Hello and good evening. Welcome to Team Rio's Progress Report 2 for the Biomed IT Domain Project. The Biomed IT Domain Project started with assessing the current network and medical systems infrastructure and interactions at the Las Vegas VA Hospital, which is who our sponsor is, the VA Hospital in Las Vegas. They have 6 sites, designed a network and database specifically for the biomed department inside the normal IT operations. We then have been presenting the findings and proposals to the sponsor as we've been going along. We've been evaluating and monitoring and controlling as we've been moving through the execution phase from sprint to sprint. And then once this is all completed, we will demonstrate the entire proof of concept to our sponsor. So basically, since the last progress report, we have focused primarily on the execution phase of the project. This has consisted of 4 single-week sprints, where each sprint is 1 week long, and we've done 4 for this Class B of the ITM capstone. And we've primarily broken the project up into the topics of network, security, database, and compliance, and each team member has focused on each of these pieces of the project. Going a little further into what I just mentioned, we have broken the project into topics to better focus our scope for each individual team member. And we've been focusing on the network, which is the internal network, the Biomed IT department that piggybacks off the main network backbone of the entire IT infrastructure for the VA hospital. Since this is a government hospital, we want to make sure everything is compliant with the regulations. They are in need of an asset tracking database to track their assets, and security is always something that needs to be covered when dealing with any IT project. Here's an overview of the execution phase laid out in the Gantt chart format, overviewing each of those topics that I kind of just mentioned within the execution phase and the steps that were taken within each topic towards achieving the goal of building the prototype.
A probability impact matrix or chart uses the probability of a risk occurring and how it relates to the impact of the risk occurring. Most of the risks had a low probability, while their impact may have been medium. The risks were gathered from the risk register. The top 3 risks are Risk 1, Risk 3, and Risk 7. Risk 1 is finishing the work early. The group has been finishing the work on time or before the time expected, and there is a probability that this can occur. Time and cost can be updated. Risk 3 is completing the work cheaper. There is also a probability of this occurring. Potential responses include updating the time and cost. Risk 7 is a user mistake to the network. It can include opening an email or website that can harm the network. Users can be trained on what type of emails or websites are safe.
The sponsor, Brennan Kukuyu, has been briefed during the design and implementation phases of the project. The sponsor is aware that this is a proof of concept, but is excited to see what Team Rio has designed that directly relates to the project goal of developing a separate biomed domain and inventory database system. A debrief of the implementation phase is scheduled for the week of 1 July.
when it comes to software, for our prototyping, we are utilizing Windows Server 2016, Windows 10, and Office 2016 through Office 365. And these are all virtual instances of these programs running in VMware. We'll also be utilizing BitLocker for security and Microsoft Access for the database demo. And this is no cost, and all of the licensing is available to us through the school. As far as the hardware goes, again, we are demonstrating in the prototype what would be needed in this situation. We're not actually utilizing any hardware, and we would be utilizing existing hardware when actually implementing it with the VA hospital.
The Active Directory domain was built using VMware. This allows for the sponsor to easily import some or all servers into their existing VM environment. This allows the sponsor to preview all the settings and features in a sandbox before deploying it on the live Veterans Affairs network. The organizational unit's OU structure matches the current and proposed environment and is ready to implement at a moment's notice. After reviewing the Layer 2 and Layer 3 infrastructure, there is very little that needs to be done to support the Biomed domain. All the virtual local area networks, VLANs, are already created, but besides a few tweaks to the IP scheme, the infrastructure and hardware can support the new domain. By reusing the existing Cisco architecture, the sponsor will save over $700,000 in hardware costs.
For the first step in our securing our server, we apply the CIS configuration benchmarks to the Windows server. For the purpose of this pilot, we leverage the AWS environment, and in AWS Marketplace, there are already pre-configured Windows servers that are CIS benchmark hardened. So this saved us time from actually doing the manual steps, and thus we launched the image from the marketplace. But in order to verify that the configurations were in place, we used the native tool SecEdit within Windows Server. And what SecEdit can offer is that you can take a database of checks to run against the server configuration, ensure that those configurations are there. As can be seen in the screenshots, these are CIS benchmark configurations that were checked against on the server and validated, and from the little green check marks on each of the checks you can see that this passed. Next was enabling auto patching. Auto patching was enabled on a daily basis. The server will go out and see if there's any new patches that are available and apply them. This takes the manual patching process out of the hands of the administrator, and the server can do it on its own. Lastly, for security, we used BitLocker for our encryption. Again, the instance was launched in AWS, and because of the limitations there, we were unable to apply BitLocker encryption on the primary drive. But to demonstrate that BitLocker's working and configuration aspects of it, we did it on the secondary drive. So in this instance, volume D was encrypted using AES-256, as can be shown from the screenshot output.
One of the needs is an asset tracking database. There are different solutions that are available to use for a database, and Microsoft Access was chosen to fit the needs of this project. The value in Microsoft Access is that it provides a way to insert and retrieve the information that is needed. For the database design, queries can be used to retrieve data. Microsoft Access was used to create the database. This is an example of the output of an SQL query using a join. A join allows data to be retrieved from two or more tables. In this example, the text username is retrieved from the logins table. The last name and first name are retrieved from the username table. This allows you to see both the username and the last name and first name of the person using that account.
The asset tracking database demo is part of the Biomed IT project. So here we are logged into a virtual Windows machine hosted on the Amazon Oz service. Go ahead and double click on the shortcut for the database on the desktop there, and as you see, it loads to a login screen. Depending on your permissions, you'll get access to different options. We're going to go ahead and first log in as the professor here. Just some test accounts we set up. So as you can see here, we get a list of all the assets that are currently checked out. If you want to see checked in and out, you can go ahead and search. So check that. There's none that we have checked in. You can click and look at the current users of the database. You can add new assets. As you can see here, you fill out all these details on each asset. It's checked out to, what location, as you can see here. These dynamically update. Your information is added. You can print that detailed screen. You can email this list in a variety of formats. But as you see here, there's no way to edit user logins, just the user contacts as far as who's checking stuff in and out, but not who can log in and out of the database. And there's also no way to run reports and see information about the data in the database. So if we go ahead and log back out, we log in as an administrator. You can see now there's more options. Edit user login. That'll open a list of user logins to add, and there's also an option to select reports. All assets, asset details, assets by categories, and we can go ahead and look at one of these. Contact book by last name. Or we can go ahead and look at assets by category. They're all vitals. Assets by location. They're all at the main location. If we went here and we changed this, and then ran this by location, you can see now it's divvied up by each location. So as you can see, there's a variety of reports. They can generate useful information and keep track of what's going on as far as the assets go. You can see down here at the bottom, it gives you a status of who's logged in, and then when you log out, it tells you. So, yep, this is the fruition of our efforts at the end of Sprint 4 for the Biomed IT Asset Tracking Database prototype built in Microsoft Access. Thank you, and thank you for watching our demo.
For Scrum Review, I felt that the collaboration tools really enhanced our ability to come together on a daily basis for Scrum. Slack provided the near real-time chat needed to accommodate our different work schedules. WebEx, where we had a scheduled communication twice a week, allowed us to get together in real time and ask questions and ensure that we're all aligned and understanding our deliverables for the week. And then Google Drive allowed a central file collaboration piece where we could work in near real time and in a central repository to ensure that the final version or the revisions of the document were all in sync. Some other key successes were accurate story pointing, clear story acceptance criteria. This was vital in allowing each person that could step in and look at a story and understand exactly what the deliverable would be for that story. And then the agile process in itself allowed us to pivot where needed. And an example would be we had allocated time to implement the CIS benchmark checks in a manual sense. However, once we determined that the pre-configured server could be launched from AWS, that saved time and we were able to allocate those story points to some of our backlog.
Since our last update, we've been mainly